This is Let's Talk Cows podcast 251. It's going to be about cow wisdom. So, before I start, I need to make a correction. Before I said Hereford was in Scotland, it's not in Scotland. It's a city in England, and the population is over 50,000 people. So I think when I said that about Scotland, I was thinking about Scottish Highlanders, or Scottish Highland, the cow. I'm a little bit obsessed with that cow. I don't know why. Now I'm going to discuss prices of farms in Ontario. So the cheapest price I found, there's expensive prices too, but the cheapest I saw was $210,000 for 81 acres. That was kind of extreme low. So maybe something's wrong with property. I don't know. Or maybe it's remote. But that was the cheapest price I could see. It was pretty extreme. But, and maybe odds are it does not have a house on it. Though I would say the cheap range was not 210,000. The cheap range was between 400,000 and 500,000. So these are the three that I saw was in the lower end. This is 420,000 for 5 acres, 500,000 for 6 acres, and then another property for 500,000 for 15 acres. This is in January 2025. The prices here in Ontario. Now, there's something about cows that a lot of people don't know. When you're buying a cow, there's no tax on the cow. If you buy a cow, say for $1,000, and you sold it for 2,000 a year later, 2 years later, there's no capital gains tax. So buying the cow is no tax. Selling a cow for a profit, you can have 100 cows. There's no capital gains tax. And if you have a mother who gives birth and she has one child, right? It's like a stock splitting. You have one stock and then becomes two stocks. Every time that happens, you don't pay tax on that either. There's a lot of advantages to cows that people don't realize. This next this next topic, yeah. This one is quite controversial. Yeah. Let me get some coffee. So this topic is controversial, that Canada is getting cheaper for Americans. There was a time when Canada and US dollar was even $1 for $1. That's not the case anymore. In 2025, it's less than 70 cents for American dollars to get one Canadian dollar, right? If you're American and you have a $1, your dollar is like 40% off here when you want to buy something. Whatever price it says, it's 40% off. You're like, oh, the dollar is going far here. And I actually think where the current price is, and I looked at the trend, I think it's going to keep going downwards. So in the past, we were one time at 67 cents comparing to the American dollar. I think that's going to happen. I don't know how fast. And then after that, I think we're going to get 63 cents. So it's just going to keep getting cheaper. If you're an American, you can come to Canada and buy cows or buy beef or buy land for cheaper than, say, the average Canadian, which means better prices for you. There's also in the news controversy about tariffs against Canada. If this happens, I think my idea of these Canadian dollar dropping is going to drop faster because the tariffs would put a pressure on the Canadian government or the Canadian banks to lower the value of the Canadian dollar to undo the tariff. So that's the way to fight back. You make your dollar worth less. So again, if you're American coming up, you're going to get very, very good deals in Canada. This is a very common question about cows on land. Do you need a barn or shelter? So I would say if you get a dairy cow, you need a heated barn because they're not very good at taking extreme weather. So they're used to being indoors all the time. But if you get breeds that we have Hereford, also Scottish Highland, they don't really need a barn. So we have a lean-to, right? They can go in there to hide when the weather's really bad. I say really bad, I mean like intense storm or extreme heat. There's places for them to go. But most of the time they are not inside. And in fact, they don't like to be inside. There's even one farmer in states, I think Missouri. He has nothing. He has no barn, no like little makeshift shelter. He just lets nature be the shelter. I think there's some trees and stuff, but he has a different climate. So you have to kind of figure out what is your area, and then ask locals what cows can take, and then also what type of breed to take in that area. Don't try to be the only one. Try to sync up with your neighbors because they will help you and they will give you advice that's correct if you have good neighbors. Cows need salt licks. So the most common one is a gray salt lick, and I think this is universal, but I've seen this in Ontario. And the gray one's the standard one. But if you have cows who are pregnant, you have to use a different salt lick. The one is like a red. So I think they've added copper or some other minerals inside that is needed for the pregnancy. If you do not have that special salt lick, the cow may give birth to a calf that's deformed. So again, if you just have regular cows, the gray one is fine. But if you plan to breed, which we will, you have to use the other one during the time for the development of the child. This one I did not know until recently. A farmer told me you have to get a mineral tub. So it's this huge, heavy tub that actually looks like a lollipop. And cows like to lick, but it's mostly because in winter they cannot get the minerals they can get in the spring, summer, and fall by licking rocks, by licking different things, because it's covered in snow. So you have to get them a mineral tub, and they really enjoy it, but it's also really good for them. And they can't, to my knowledge, abuse it. They won't like crazy, but they enjoy doing it, and it gives them things in their body to keep them healthy. So if you're in the winter, you need a mineral tub. So if you want to learn a farm skill, right? Say you want to shear sheep. You don't learn the skill by doing it once a year for 10 years. The way you learn the skill is you have to go to another farm who has lots of them to shear. And then you do intense training for like 2 weeks solid. Every day you're shearing sheep. And then after that you have the skill. So for us with cows, we have 8. We're going to try to get all of them pregnant at the same time. So we're not having a baby once a month. We're going to have 8 babies in 5 days, and that's or 7, and that will kind of overwhelm us, but it will train us on how to handle having babies. Also, we can ask local farmers to help and say, please don't be on vacation or away during that time, because if we have babies coming out and they're not coming out easy, we're gonna have to call you and help you and ask you to help us. And farmers do not want cows to die, so if you tell them you have an issue, they come over very quickly. They want to see success. Now, there's a lot of wisdom here, and I'm going to have to keep checking because it comes from different sources. But the first one is from Brett. He said, when hay is cheap, cows are expensive. And when hay is expensive, cows are cheap. So in the winter, you can only have hay to feed your cow. And if the price is really cheap, you're like, yeah, I'll just buy a lot of hay, no problem. You pretty much keep your cows. But if the price doubles and you're like, I didn't have a budget for this double price, you may sell off half your herd to pay for those cows that winter. And you, of course, you get money from the cows, but most importantly, you have that budget of hay, and you're like, I can handle this. The thing is, if you were doing this, you're not the only one. Everyone in your area has to deal with the expensive hay price. So everyone's selling cows same time. And what happens is you have something called supply and demand. If demand is the same and supply doubles, the people who are buying just lean back and go, I don't know if I'm going to buy your cow for that price. The price will drop. So this is a rule. Next one is also from Brett, is why do farmers buy the expensive stuff? The answer, to save money. So for the average person, that doesn't make any sense. If something's twice the price, buying that one, you lose money. Buy the cheaper one. But for a farmer, it's the reality of things break. These animals break things. And if you get the one that's not as good, it breaks sooner. And then you have to buy a second one. But if you buy the best one, it can last you years. And over the long term, it is cheaper. So that's the advice. Or that's the question and answered, kind of the farmer's paradox. Why do they buy the most expensive things? They don't regret it. This advice I did not hear directly, I heard indirectly. And this is from Daryl's father on farming, or just in general. It's not even cows, but it's in general. If you're not going to buy new, buy two. And the reason is the new item, odds are it's not going to break down on you for a long time, or if you have a warranty. But if you buy a used one, you're in a situation where it may break down. So you have to buy two of them. So ideally the same, model and stuff like that, if you can, or same brand. But if one breaks down, you have a backup. Or if they are the exact same, you can maybe change parts between both of them to make it work. So one is a spare to the other. So that's the advice. And this other advice is from Fred. He said that the older the equipment, the smaller it is. So if you look at tractors from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and then compare it to the tractors from the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s, he says there's a real size difference. And it's always the same trend. Go back in time, it is smaller. So this one is not wisdom at all. This is a strange one, but I think this is normal. People just don't understand basic things about farming. So a farmer has said that he's encountered people in real life who thought chocolate milk came from brown cows. Now, when you're out here farming, you don't believe that. You're like, that's crazy. Who would think that? But no, it's true. When people are disconnected to farming, they see cows and they just assume the color of the cow represents the color of their milk. So when you buy chocolate milk, it came from a brown cow. And of course, you see those black and white cows, so you assume that's where the white milk comes from, right? Now, this next bit is not on cow wisdom. It's from me. So this one I came up with. The in life, let heart. No, in life, let the heart be the compass, but the brain be the captain. So when you're going in life and you want to know which way to go and what you should do, let your heart guide you. I think it always points in the right direction for you, not for someone else, but for you. Like, I really want to do this. And after you've decided this is what you want to do because your heart has told you, next use your brain and say, how do I go about this? What makes the most sense? Get research, ask for help, test to see if the help is true. Do that stuff that I gave before in the other advice. So this one's not for me, but it's one I heard as a kid and as an adult. I keep seeing it to be true. The famous saying, slow and steady wins the race, is the truth. Those who are going the fastest they can will get distracted and won't complete the journey because they want to do other things after racing along. But if you're slow and steady and you're like, I'm going in this direction, you will get there ahead of the person who went quickly. So we were told in farming, it's going to take you like 10 years before you get good at it or you feel comfortable with, I've seen highs, I've seen lows, you can handle it. You're not going to get it done in 1 year. And we're currently in 6 months. So there's going to be a lot of education along the way. This is also life advice I've heard, or this is also life advice I've come up with. And I think it's me, but it might not be me. The saying is, the hottest ovens produce the strongest steel. So if you're going through life and you're having some difficulty, consider that like a hot oven. It's like, ooh, it's really hot in here. It's not comfortable. But at the same time, as you're going through it, you're forming a steel that is stronger than other people's steel. And when you go outside of the oven and you have to deal with situations in life, you're like, I can handle this. Like, how do you know? I handled worse before. This is not a big deal. It's tough, but it's not a big deal. I can totally do it. And also how we're going to number the podcast is going to be based on the year. So the first two numbers are going to be the year. Last one was 24. This is 25. And then the third number is going to be probably the month. I don't know exactly, but probably the month it comes out. Of course, if it's the 11th month or the 12th month, there's no way I can do that unless I do 4 numbers, but I don't want to. So I'll probably just do a 0. So for November or December, I'll put a 0. But from 1 to 9, I'll do the month. And I don't know if it's going to be every month. So maybe every 2 months to start, or eventually run out of advice to give. or people to interview, but we'll see what happens with this podcast. And this was recorded on January 18th, 2025. Give yourself a try, see what you can do. More updates coming later from the farm in Ontario.